I had planned to do an introduction, but of course, we're always going to be more happy about content than we are about niceties. So the first nice person I would like to introduce is LaTanya Harris, who's the eligibility supervisor from the Department of Human Services. And then we'll follow up with some information about SSI, SSDI, and then come around the corner with special needs trust and ABLE accounts. So a lot going on today. I'll remind folks in between, but what we plan to do is ask folks to use the chat to the extent they can. Because there is so little time, we will let folks who are knowledgeable about a particular topic try to answer or say, well, no, Marilyn, that's not quite right. This is what I think, or yeah, Marilyn, yes, but. And then I will go ahead and read that during breaks. But let's start with LaTanya so that we can find out a little bit more about eligibility and these benefit services and maintaining eligibility, right, LaTanya? LaTanya, you're on mute.
Hello, I'm LaTanya Harris. I'm an eligibility supervisor with the Public Assistance Bureau. I currently supervise the age, blind, and disabled unit of cases where we keep the cases for its ongoing life. We also have an intake unit, and we keep the cases after they're approved. And I was asked to speak on Medicaid, specifically what Medicaid is and how you can apply for it, and how waiver services could benefit someone, even though they may be over the regular Medicaid income limit. Medicaid is essentially a health coverage for low-income families or individuals. It also assists people that have disabilities, that are aged, and we also have coverage for children. And about 5 years ago, we started getting coverage for adults. It used to be just adults, but you had to be disabled that could be qualified for Medicaid. But now we have it for everyone. Essentially, Medicaid it has its income limits depending on what your situation is, but I'm going to focus on age, blind, and disabled clients. Regular Medicaid, essentially for full coverage, the income limit is $972 for age, blind, and disabled people. However, you can apply for long-term care Medicaid, which is essentially you have people that go into nursing homes, or they're approved for some type of waiver service, or we have auxiliary grants, we have DD waivers. So there are different services in which a client could be assessed for to determine whether they could be possibly eligible for full coverage despite their income. The one thing that stands is the resource limit, which is $2,000. Resources has to be below $2,000 in order for anyone to be eligible for full coverage Medicaid that is age, blind, or disabled. Okay. I believe with waiver services, particularly, it's the same thing, $2,000 limit. We also have children that apply. Now, if a child is approved for a waiver, the parent's income is not countable. However, when they do apply, they are required to list themselves as on the application and their income information. And the reason for that is because although the parent's income would not be countable for children, if at some point the child is no longer eligible for the waiver services, then the parent's income becomes countable at that point. So we have to have that information just in case. Okay. There are several different ways that people can apply for Medicaid. One is there is a call center that's based in Richmond with the Department of Medical Assistance Services, and they can apply over the phone at 1-855-635-4370. Also, we have the Common Help website where people can go online and submit applications. And that's commonhelp.virginia.gov. Also, clients have the option of submitting applications to the DHS website at dhs@arlingtonva.us. That's a completed application, or they can come into our office at 2100 Washington Boulevard and submit the application there. So there's a lot of different options to submit an application for Medicaid. And we really encourage people to try the phone line or online, but if they feel the need to come in and they want to do the application written, then they can come in and do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that overview. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Marilyn Morrison, who is currently the director of the Maryland Work Incentive Network, but she's been a long time benefits expert here in Virginia. And so we're going to ask her to just give us an overview of some of the ins and outs of SSI, SSDI, and then the piece that some of us are not too familiar with is the the benefits for disabled children.
CDB, right. Hold on, let me turn off my phone. And I'd like to share my screen if I could. Don't know how to do that though.
If you go to up at the top, you'll see where it says the camera and mic, and you'll see share next to that.
Yeah,
it has an arrow pointing up.
I have that, but it doesn't look like it's sharing my content.
Okay, it's
that
sharing,
I have up. My screen, but I can't find my content.
Okay.
That I have.
If you want, you can also send it to me via email real quickly, and I can pull it up.
Or Marilyn, you can under share, go back to share and then select share my screen and then just find it in on your computer.
I don't even see share my screen. Oh, I see screen, I see window. Let's see, hold on.
Yeah,
oh.
There's one called screen and one called window. Okay, thank you.
You guys, okay, can you guys, everybody can see that, hopefully? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, good. I'm glad. Good. Yeah, I'm very good with Zoom, not so much with Teams. So thank you, Sherry. As Sherry explained, I am the director of the Maryland Work Incentive Network, which is part of the Work Incentive Planning and Assistance through Social Security. So I'm on a cooperative grant with Social Security to provide benefits counseling. I've been in this current position for 2.5 years. Prior to that, I ran the Virginia Work Incentive Planning and Assistance for, about 15 years. And then I do have a private practice in Virginia as well. So I'm now certified in both Virginia, DC, and Maryland. So I do a lot of that. So we're going to talk about today the differences between SSI and SSDI, the working rules for both SSI and SSDI, and then available work incentives. And I am going to touch on the waiver rules as well. And then, as Sherry said, those childhood disability benefits, because that can have a huge impact on waiver eligibility. So before I start, I always like to talk about just my checklist for success. With Social Security, don't look for logic. When you call that 1-800 number, make sure you're paying attention to the name, the date, and what you asked and what they told you, and make sure that you're making copies of everything that you give to Social Security. Right now, Social Security has its lowest staffing level in 25 years. It is, I am not mincing words here, it's a mess. Folks are doing 4 and 5 and 6 levels of work. My contacts, which are a little bit higher up, are completely overloaded. So it really is incumbent on you or as a rep payee or beneficiary to make sure that you're following the rules, because Social Security may not be doing a review for 18 to 24 months. They might not even get to the paperwork they need to send you for 18 to 24 months. So you really need to be aware of that. Again, make sure that you're making copies of all the documents you give to Social Security, both the forms you fill out and the evidence that you want them to have, and don't lose the copies. Social Security will not accept electronic copies. So they will not accept scanned copies. If you get the email address of someone at the local field office, they will not accept them. They will accept either faxed copies, they will accept hard copies dropped off, but otherwise they will not accept electronic copies. They will not open files. It's a security situation. So you need to be very clear on that. They have set up something called the work track faxes. They did this during the pandemic. And this is the easiest way to send paperwork to Social Security, so you do have a copy. And I have those numbers, so you can always contact me and let me know what office you're looking at, and I can give you that work track number in order to fax the paperwork. Make sure that you're promptly opening and reading all of the mail that you get from Social Security. Social Security gives a deadline response date, and compliance within that date is required. Prior to this period of time, I used to tell people, anything post eligibility, you can call and they'll give you extra time to submit paperwork. But right now, because Social Security is in such disarray, they are not granting deadlines. They're not granting a deadline extensions at the moment, or it's pretty hard to get those deadline extensions. They're trying to work as quickly as they possibly can, as efficiently. So the compliance within the date right now is strongly urged. If you're not able to comply with any of the response dates, please contact the local field office as quickly as you can and let them know about a manageable date that you will be able to process any paperwork that they're looking for. When there is work in while you're receiving either SSI or SSDI, you must report your pay stubs every month to Social Security. I don't care what Social Security tells you. And oftentimes they will say, oh, no, you don't need to do it. You're fine. Oh, we'll let you know when there's a problem. That's true. They are going to let you know when there's a problem, but they don't work in real time. So they might let you know there's a problem 2 years later and you now have a massive overpayment. So make sure that you are reporting. You can report by mail. You can walk into the local field office. You can also use the My SSA account. The My SSA account is a little bit cumbersome in that if there is work, they have to have your employer listed in your record. So unfortunately, you do have to go into the local field office and let them know about your employer, but once that's up on your My Social Security account, you can report your earnings that way. There's also an app that is available for SSI. If a person receives SSI and or Medicaid, remember to keep all your resources and assets below $2,000 for the individual or $3,000 for a couple. And Medicaid is a state by state process. So Medicaid eligibility may vary from state to state. There's always a lot of questions around that $2,000, and I'm going to go through a little bit more detail in that as we move through this. And then also when a major life change occurs, make sure that you're reporting to Social Security as quickly as you can. I would say you want to do it both with that 1-800 number and the local SSA field office, and make sure that it is up to date. So let's talk about SSI first. SSI is a cash benefit paid to individuals who meet medical, disability, and financial needs criteria. It is means tested. The maximum amount that a person can receive in 2023 is $914. That amount is going up to $943 for 2024. And when you see it listed as FBR, oftentimes you will see FBR 943. That's the federal benefit rate. and that means that's the SSI amount. And again, SSI is directly associated with Medicaid. You do have to apply for Medicaid in Virginia. So even though you are absolutely eligible for Medicaid, when you become eligible for SSI, you do still have to apply for Medicaid. I don't know if we have anybody from Maryland here. In Maryland, it's an automatic application. So for Maryland, the rules are a little bit different. And again, that resource level of $2,000. I know we're talking a lot about Medicaid today, so I'm going to go through this very quickly. It's a federal Medicaid assistance program. It's they do look at the medically disabled person's eligibility is based on the resources, and that's bank account, property, and income. And SSI makes one eligible to apply for Medicaid in Virginia, as I said. There's an automatic eligibility, but you do have to apply in Virginia. So in SSI and Medicaid, again, there are specific resource limitations. It's set by statute. It can be countable real or personal property, including cash. The waiver rules are within the statute. The one thing I do want to stress that, and I always say this, is that all of these programs that we're talking about stay in their own lane. They don't cross over. So, and they don't generally will play nice with each other. So the rules that we're talking about for SSI might be different for SSDI, might be different for Medicare, might be different for Medicaid, and then the waiver has its own working rules as well. So you do need to be aware of that. And as I said, they all kind of stay in their own lane, unfortunately. So with SSI is for food and shelter first. If the individual is age 18 or older and someone is providing his or her food and or shelter, the base SSI check, SSI cash benefit will be less than $914 or $943. What that means is when you go through that initial eligibility questionnaire, when you have that interview, the claims rep will ask you, are you planning to pay rent? Do you pay rent? Do you pay for your room and board? If as a parent or the rep payee, that individual is living with you and you go in and say, oh, heck no, do you know what rents are in this area? That $943 is going to be reduced automatically by 1/3. As far as Social Security is concerned, you are living in the household of another. It doesn't matter who the other is. Doesn't matter if it's a grandmother, an aunt, an uncle, parents, whoever. You do have to pay your fair share of room and board. So as you're going through that initial eligibility piece, I always recommend having a lease. I have a sample lease. I know the ARC of Northern Virginia has my sample lease as well. You can always email me and I can send you that sample lease. You cannot charge more though than $943 for 2024. If you say, oh yeah, they're going to pay $1,200 a month, that is a problem as well because they're only going to be getting $943 for their SSI. Where's the additional money coming from? So that it becomes a little bit of a dance. If for some reason you don't charge rent, but then you do want to start charging rent, or that individual does start paying for their own food and shelter, you can always get that changed. You just need to go back into the Social Security field office. Going into the field office is the better way when you're looking at changing this particular situation. If you mail a lease in, you don't know where it's going to end up. You don't know how long it's going to take for it to change. You don't know who's going to be looking at it. But if you take it in with you, they can make that change right on their desktop, and that can take care of the situation very quickly. In this area right now, I'm recommending anywhere from say $650 to even $700 a month. They can ask you, well, how much is your mortgage? How much is your rent? How much are your utilities? They can ask that. If you have another child in the house that's paying you rent, for instance, our son is living with us right now, and we do charge him rent. So, if you can say, well, we're charging our other child this much, and we're going to charge we're going to charge our son the same amount, then that goes a long way as well. But there's a little bit of a dance with that. It's not horrible if they reduce it by 1/3. It just means that you're not going to get that full amount of $943. But again, that can be changed. Let's talk about that resources that I mentioned. Remember, you cannot have any more than $2,000 in resources. Okay, resources does not mean income. Resources is cash, savings accounts, stocks, bonds, CDs, IRAs, land owned but not lived on. Anything owned that is converted to cash that's used for food and shelter. That one is kind of a weird one. I've never seen that happen. If the individual is under the age of 18, they are going to look at the resources of the parent, or they will look at the resources of a spouse. Again, clothing someone might give you or a gift to a beneficiary is excluded. Burial space for a beneficiary and immediate family. Burial funds up to $1,500 for an individual and spouse. This has to be a dedicated burial fund. It can't just be, oh yeah, I'm saving that money for my burial fund. It has to be a dedicated burial fund account. Life insurance with a combined face value of not more than $1,500. Retroactive SSI and or SSDI. There is a general exclusion of any back payments that you might receive for up to 9 months. So they don't look at any of those back payment amounts for 9 months. Property in a specific trust, and I know that today you all are going to be talking about special needs trust and then other exclusionary accounts as well as the ABLE accounts. PASS account, the plan to achieve self-support, as well as the property essential for self-support. And they do allow for 1 automobile. So when we're talking about that $2,000, here's the main crux of it, because this is generally where I get a lot of questions. Your accounts can go over $2,000 in the middle of the month. Social Security is okay with that. But if in the last day of the month at 11:59 p.m., you cannot have $2,000 that rolls into the next month. So it's okay if it goes up over $2,000 in the middle of the month. Just make sure that you don't have over $2,000 when you roll into the next month. That's very important. It's an all or SSI is all or nothing when we're talking about over that $2,000 piece of it. If you have over $2,000 and it does roll into the next month, even if you're over by $10, $20, $30, you are not eligible for the full amount of SSI. So you would not be eligible for that 914 in 2023. So it's very important that you watch that. From a waiver standpoint, again, Medicaid standpoint, it can cause a lot of problems, and you do want to look at those, any of those exclusionary accounts that I know is going to be discussed later in this presentation. Some commonly asked questions: how much can I earn and still keep my benefits? If I work, will I lose my Medicaid? Is there a way I keep more of my SSI check while working? And when and what must I report to Social Security? And we are absolutely going to answer those questions. So when we're talking about SSI, SSA reduces the maximum SSI amount by a portion of the total countable income. The rule of thumb is for every $2 you earn, you lose $1 of your SSI. So that means if an individual is earning $1,000 a month gross, Social Security will always look at gross unless you're self-employed. I have a ton of clients right now that are part of the gig economy. So they're Uber drivers, they're Lyft, they're Uber Eats, they're doing a lot of DoorDash, those kind of things. Social Security looks at that income differently. But if you've got someone that's earning $1,000 a month gross, then you're going to lose about $420 from that SSI amount. So if in 2024, the SSI amount is $943, you would still get over $500 from your SSI in addition to earning that $1,000 gross. There are no earnings limits for SSI. there is something called 1619B that we will be discussing a little bit later. With Social Security and especially SSI, SSI is a month-to-month benefit, so you do have to report your earnings monthly. If you do not report, so say you report for a couple of months, you report for 3 or 4 months, but then, you know, month number 5 comes along and you forget and you don't report. Social Security is going to put an estimate of earnings into your system. So you're still going to see your SSI reduced by an estimate based on the previous month's work history. So what that means is, for instance, if you stop working, if you don't work as much, if you're working seasonal, you have to let Social Security know when you start working and when you stop working. It's very important. I can't tell you how many times I've had clients who have come to me and their SSI is being reduced by $100 and they don't know why it's being reduced by $100. They haven't worked in a year, but it's still being reduced. The reason why it's still being reduced is because there's an estimate of earnings in the system and no one has told Social Security that they stopped working. Social Security does not assume. So they don't assume if you don't report your earnings, you've stopped working. They just assume, well, you didn't report. So that's why they put that estimate of earnings in. So you want to be really careful with that. Again, the easiest way to report earnings is either through that MySSA app. Personally, I like faxing. The reason why I like faxing is because you get a confirmation that you've done the right thing. You get the confirmation that the fax has gone through and they received the wages. If there's an issue with an overpayment, if they are not reducing the SSI in a timely manner, you can, and I've had several beneficiaries do this, you can go back and you can ask for a waiver of that overpayment, showing them proof that you did what you were supposed to do. You reported your earnings every month, but Social Security did not do their job. It's not your fault. You have this overpayment. You did everything that you were supposed to do. They might not have done it as quickly or as easily. And so it's always important to keep that proof. Anytime you can get a proof, because otherwise, if you have an overpayment, Social Security says, well, you didn't report your earnings. Yes, I did. I reported my earnings. Well, how did you report it? I mailed it. Okay. Do you have a receipt? No. How do you know? You're still going to have that overpayment, unfortunately. So make sure whenever you're working with Social Security, you're keeping those backup pieces. There is something called impairment-related work expenses. These are any out-of-pocket expenses that support the disability and enable a person to work. The expense must be directly related to supporting the disability. The cost must be paid out of the person's pocket and not covered by other funding sources. So if waiver is paying for transportation, can't use that because you're not paying for it. Waiver is paying for it. But if it's a split, if, for instance, you are working for an Ability One employer that is providing transportation, but you're paying $10 a day, you're paying $8 a day, then that absolutely is considered to be an impairment-related work expense. If you're paying someone to take you back and forth to work, if you're paying a fee to someone, if you're using Uber, if you're using a taxi, any of those expenses are looked to be an impairment-related work expense. And you need to report those when you're reporting your monthly wages. That's going to bring down that countable earned income that Social Security looks at. So it can help you keep more of your SSI. There's also something called student earned income exclusion.
This is Sherry. I'm going to pause for a second. I'm just looking at time. It's 4:30, and I wonder if you want to negotiate with Anna about what you want her to cover as part of her piece that you're not going to be able to cover. Does that make sense, Anna?
It looks like she's covered almost everything of mine, so I keep going.
No.
So, but Anna, can you do maybe more on the SSDI piece?
I was going to talk about what benefits planning and the waiver means and some of the stuff that I do personally, but she can continue to talk about the SSI, the SSDI, and everything else, because that's
I'm going to touch on childhood disability benefit. I'm going to check on CDB, and then that's student income exclusion, and then that's basically it.
And
Okay.
Anna, if people have questions, if you can also answer questions in the chat. And how much time are you going to need?
For me,
Yeah.
I was gonna, what I had with what she had, we kind of have a meld of what we had. We probably should have collaborated on what we were doing. But it's okay. We'll work it out. It's all about providing the information.
We appreciate all of this. I'm
Well, Anna, let me
learning
do this.
more.
If Anna, if you're going to be talking about student earned income exclusion, I'll just jump over that, let you do that.
No, I was going to mention the types of work incentives that I can do. I wasn't going to go into them completely. So please, by all means, continue to discuss them.
Okay.
I don't want to break what you're doing, but I'll be fine with what I have. I'm crossing out as I go what you're doing.
Oh no, I'm so sorry. I had said something.
Okay.
And Anna, what some people do is they just kind of, if you do have a slide deck, you just kind of just skip that slide, but keep it in your slide deck.
Yeah. Okay. I have very few slides because I'm more of a talker than a slider.
Okay.
Yeah, but
great.
it's also,
Thank you.
you know what, this information is so complex that I think even as a, anything that you want to go over that I've gone over is going to be greatly appreciated, because it, as you said, it's such a complex issue that I think it'd be, I think it'll be fabulous if we're both touching on some of the same points.
Okay. Thank you. And I just wanted to do a time check. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So student income exclusion. This is one of those pieces that if you have an individual that is in school still prior to the age of 22, then they regularly attend school, to a portion of that income is excluded. It's a fairly hefty amount. So that for every $2 earned, you lose $1. Quotient gets thrown out the window. For 2024, the amount is $2,290 a month, or $9,230 for the year. So that means that as long as if you have a student, they're in school, they are regularly attending school, they're in a full schedule, or in some cases it can be a modified schedule, then Social Security will exclude that full amount. You're not going to see your SSI being reduced. I have a feeling that plan to achieve self-support is going to be talked about, so I'm going to skip over that. If that's okay, Sherry? Yes?
Don't ask, just keep going.
All right. Okay. So let's talk about 1619B, because this is really the big piece of it. And so when you're talking about SSI, and I said there's no earnings limit, that's kind of right and kind of wrong. The thing about SSI that people get a little bit nervous about is if they're earning income and for every $2 they earn, they lose that $1. At some point, you can hit that break-even point. And people get very nervous, and they say, well, wait a minute, I'm not going to be getting my SSI, my Medicaid is going to be cut off. That's not true at all. What happens is, if you start earning income where you get to that break-even point where you're not eligible for the SSI, you still remain eligible on paper, as I like to say, for the SSI. That's okay. You're just not going to get your benefit for that month. But if the income drops, then the income comes back, the SSI comes back. There is something called 1619B, and that basically says that if you need Medicaid to work, if you've used Medicaid in the last 12 months, you plan on using Medicaid in the next 12 months, your SSI eligibility is going to stay with you, and so is your Medicaid. That easy. The threshold amount for 1619B eligibility is $48,092. So in Virginia, a person can earn $48,092 gross, and they're still going to remain eligible for Medicaid and quite possibly their SSI. The thing about 1619B that you do have to be very careful about is that you do have to reapply every year for it. It's quick. It's very fast. I have a one-page form that I put together with Social Security several years ago, and it's 3 questions, but it's basically saying, yep, I still need my Medicaid, don't cut me off. But this is one of those programs people get nervous about. Don't get nervous. I'm going to just jump over waivers very quickly. I know that's going to be talked about. These are the waiver categories. The thing that you want to be careful about with waiver is the special earnings allowance. And I feel like that might be something that's going to be talked about, but with Medicaid waivers, there is something called the earnings allowance. They do look at the number of hours that a person is working. So for individuals employed 20 hours or more per week, all of the earned income up to 300% of the SSI is allowed. For 2024, that's $2,829. For individuals employed at least 4 but less than 20 hours per week, all earned income up to 200% of SSI, and that's $1,886. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this. If you do earn over that 300%, you are absolutely in jeopardy of losing your waiver status. And this is not the same as patient pay, which I'm not going to get into. So let's talk about SSDI. SSDI is you can be eligible for SSDI a couple of different ways. One of them, and that's disability income or Title II. You do have to have the required work credits through FICA. We're always paying into that system with FICA. There is you have to show 12 months of non-SGA income. So there is something called substantial gainful activity. And that number is actually $1,550 gross in 2024. So what Social Security does is, in order to be found eligible for either SSI or SSDI, the definition of disability in a nutshell is that you have to show that you're not able to earn over substantial gainful activity or that $1,550 gross without supports for at least 12 months. For at least 12 months. There is that initial eligibility. There is medical eligibility. This is if you're working, all right? So if you're working, you've put enough credits into the system, then you can be found eligible. But another way that you can be found eligible for SSDI is through something called the childhood disability benefits. This is, you have to be shown to be disabled prior to the age of 22. Non-legal married, you have to be not legally married to a non-Title II beneficiary. So someone that is not, if somebody else is getting SSI, then that's a whole, and you don't have enough of your own FICA to be found eligible for SSDI. When a parent either retires, becomes disabled, or they're deceased, the individual that's receiving SSI and has been found eligible as a childhood disability beneficiary is going to flip from the SSI side to the SSDI side. At that point, the child is going to be entitled to approximately 1/2 of the parent's benefit if the parent is living, or about 3/4 of the benefit if the parent is deceased. So for example, what that means is if you have a child that's found to be disabled, you go in at age 18 and you get them eligible for SSI, and everything is great and they're getting the full amount and they're working and everything is awesome. But unfortunately, we all get older, and now you as a parent are older, you're now going to go to Social Security and go, you know what, I've been paying into this system for 1,000,000 years. I am retirement age to get my Social Security retirement. You start taking your Social Security retirement, then the child that you so diligently got eligible prior to the age of 22 will now get approximately half of what you're receiving. So if you're receiving $3,000 from your Social Security retirement, I'm not saying you retire from a business or you're getting retirement from military. I'm saying strictly Social Security retirement. When you reach age 66 and 10 months, 67, whatever your retirement age is for Social Security, if you're getting $3,000 from your retirement, your child is going to get approximately $1,500. That's considered to be unearned income. If your child is working, that can cause some issues. So you really want to be very careful about just knowing those numbers as you're moving forward. And the one thing I do want to stress here is that You cannot go in and go, oh, I want my retirement, but I don't want my child to get half of my retirement. It is automatic, and by law, that person must flip from SSI to SSDI. So unfortunately, it's not something that you can control in that fact. It means that your child that was found eligible prior to the age of 22 is directly attached to your Social Security record. I've given you the earnings allowance again. The thing about I want to add to the earnings allowance is that when you're looking at 300% of SSI, that $2,829 also includes unearned income. So for instance, if you have somebody that's working and they're receiving SSI, they're maybe earning $1,800 to $2,000 a month, but now mom or dad is open their Social Security record, and now the beneficiary is going to get, say, $1,800 from mom or dad's work history, then they easily are going to be over that 300%. So you want to be very careful with that. There is something called the Special Groups of Former SSI Recipients. It's called the Pickle Amendment. It is not pickle that you eat. It's named after Jake Pickle of Texas. He was the oldest serving senator or congressman, I believe, from Texas. I'm always very proud to say that because I'm from Texas. But basically what this says is that by no fault of their own, the individual was moved from SSI to SSDI. And because of that, they should not lose their Medicaid eligibility. Now, this is just general age, blind, and disabled Medicaid. This does not include waiver. So the Pickle Amendment does not include waiver rules. This is in general Medicaid. If an individual moves from the SSI side to the SSDI side, and because of the amount that they're receiving from SSDI, they might not normally be eligible for Medicaid, but they were moved over to the DI side because of their status as a childhood disability beneficiary, they will remain eligible, Medicaid eligible, under something called the Pickle Amendment. So it's very important to know that that does exist. And that is a federal statute. It's not a state statute. I know you're going to be talking about ABLE now later on, so I'm going to skip over that. And again, you know, to avoid overpayments and other situations, I absolutely recommend a benefit analysis from any community work incentive coordinator or a work incentive planning, anyone that does any type of benefits counseling. It's very important to do that. Make sure that you're submitting your pay stubs and your IRWI, those are those impairment related work expenses receipts every month. Remember about that $2,000 in resource limit in order to remain eligible. And then I always recommend that you notify a community work incentives coordinator or a CPWIC as well, which is a community, another type of work incentive counselor. I always recommend that you do contact someone if you get those notifications, or if you're thinking about income or not, of just if there's going to be a Social Security situation. I strongly recommend that you contact someone to get more information. Oftentimes, I know in my system, we have some back doors that we can go through to get the information. So I highly recommend that. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. You can email me, you can call me at any time and ask me any questions, and I'm happy to help. And I'm going to stop share. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer the question. I'm also going to be sending this as a PDF, Sherry, so you'll have that to send out to folks. Great.
And Marilyn, after all that, you did this only 5 minutes over. So Anna, we still have time set out for you. And I just want to let folks know that Anna Hogan has a lot of acronyms after her name: MBA, MSMIS, CESP, WIP-C, WIP-Y, and she's the team leader for benefits planning for Employment's Advocates Group, and was invited by LaVoice to come speak to us today. So thank you very, very much, Anna, for coming.
Thank you for asking me to be here. It's quite an honor. I'm still new at doing benefits planning. I've only started doing this in 2021, but I am certified through Cornell, so I'm supposed to know my stuff because all those letters after my name mean a lot. So I'm trying to figure out how to get my file to share.
So at the top of your screen, next to the red thing that says leave, there's something that says share. Select that and then select share my screen so that you can just look at your presentation and not have to find it in a file somewhere.
Okay, I'm trying to find it. It's there. It popped up a whole bunch, but it's not showing the one that I want. So hold on. I had it at the bottom trying to drag it, but it didn't work.
You can just show it on your, put it on your computer so you can see it. And then select share my screen and then just look at your computer.
Oh, there we go.
If it's the last document that you had open, it should automatically go to that one.
Okay, share, send a copy. No. Okay, it says email as attachment. Why is it asking me to do that? Share.
And you can email it to LaVoice and LaVoice can
I
forward
figured
your
out
slides for you. Okay.
It's showing me. It says my email is not my primary source. I'm like, okay, this is my work computer. Why isn't it? So many things. We've had such a hard.
It's so frustrating.
Yeah, it is. It's very frustrating. While that's uploading, I need to step out and grab my cord. So give me 2 seconds, okay?
In the meantime, if anyone has any questions for Marilyn, you can turn on your mic and ask.
Hi, Marilyn. It's Bertram again. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for the information about SSDI. You mentioned that the Pickle Amendment protects individuals from losing Medicaid eligibility, right?
Correct.
As a result of SSDI. But explain how SSDI can impact the Medicaid waiver.
Okay, that's a great question. So it can impact the Medicaid waiver because remember, waiver has a couple of different earnings rules. One of them is at 300%. So if an individual is working and receiving SSDI, if that goes over that 300%, which in 2024 is $2,829, then they can lose their waiver standing. There is also something called patient pay. Now they're not going to lose their waiver standing with something called patient pay. That's a little bit different in that there's an unearned income threshold amount, and I went looking for it today and I really couldn't find it. But what happens is that say an individual starts getting.
Tell them how to get down on the elevator.
Somebody has their.
Can everyone please mute yourselves?
I just muted them.
Yeah, now I don't have the I went looking for, I also have a terrible head cold, but I went looking for the patient pay information. The patient pay can have an impact in that you're still subject to that 300%. So if somebody, for instance, starts getting more than that $2,829 from SSDI as a CDB benefit, and that's going to cause a waiver issue in itself. But say you've got someone that starts getting $2,100 from SSDI, there's a patient pay that they will have to pay back to a provider. Off the top of my head, I don't have that information. I'm sure whoever is talking about waiver today can probably pull that out very quickly. It was at some point about $1,500.
Yeah, it's 1508. 2023.
Thank you, Lucy. I knew you would have it. So yeah, so for 1508, right, Lucy? Yeah,
yeah,
so
that's right. And it's 165% of SSI.
Yeah, so 1508. So what happens is if you've got somebody that starts getting, say, $1,800, a parent passes away, they get 75% of the parent's work history, and they maybe get $1,800. that patient pay is going to kick in at about they're going to have to pay the provider back $300 a month. So there are different levels of income. That 300% though is that one that you really, really, really have to pay attention to, because it can really throw people off very quickly, especially if they're working. There are just too many times where I had in the past, and I still have it within the Virginia system. Again, Maryland system, 100% different. Where I still have folks saying, but I'm working and I'm earning $1,800 a month, but now, you know, dad passed away and now they're going to get $2,000 from his work history of, you know, well, now, unfortunately, that person has to make a choice, and most likely they have to stop working. They have to reduce their earnings. This is something that I know that Lucy and I have talked about, gosh, for years and years and years and years and years. And we have tried everything we possibly can through the state legislature to either do a spend down, to allow for different pieces, even do a patient pay there. But literally, it's an all or nothing. If you're going to earn over that 300% and you're working, then you're going to have to figure out how you're not earning as much money. And it's really detrimental to so many people.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I got on my high horse on that one. That's one of my pet
Okay.
peeves about the Virginia system.
Marilyn, we want you there. And yes, the ARC and the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities are working on some things with the governor's office right now to try to fix it. And the question that you answered tells me that the fix isn't going to fix everything. So that's that.
We have been
Now,
trying.
Anna, are you here? And when you're ready, just use that share my screen and start sharing.
You know, Sherry, I can say, you know, when I was with the association for years, I was with the association for 20 years. We tried it for 20 years. We looked at everything, and there was never, we tried it in every way. We tried to convince legislators because it was going to, you know, add more income to the state coffers because there's taxes. We tried every which way, and for whatever reason, it shows up every year. Lucy works very hard at it. I know my association, my former association, works very hard at it, but it tends to not go anywhere. So hopefully it'll go someplace.
Well, this year it got into the budget, and that was passed by both houses.
Nice.
But when they were not able to end the session, and the governor finally passed the budget in, I don't know, Lucy, September or something, none of the amendments got in. So we hope we're very close. Anna, do you need help by sending your presentation to LaVoice or sharing your screen?
Hang on, I have one of my coworkers trying to fix it. My computer has some security thing on it, so hold on.
Lucy, at this point, then, can you talk a little bit about what we're trying to do at the General Assembly, or do you want me to share since I was at the meeting this week?
Sure, I'm happy to share. So we're actually trying to tackle this in two different ways. The program that Sherry alluded to just now that almost passed this year and really having nothing to do with anyone's opposition to it, it's a one-time fluke with the budget, didn't, is a program called Medicaid Works. It's been around in Virginia for many years. And much like Marilyn described with 1619B, Medicaid Works' idea is if you're on Medicaid and you start working and earning so much that it would kick you off Medicaid, by enrolling in Medicaid Works, you can stay in Medicaid a lot longer, earning up to $75,000 a year. But
okay, wait, I have a question.
Oh yeah.
Okay, however, remember when Medicaid Works, the issue was that in order to get into Medicaid Works, you couldn't be getting any more than $900 and something from unearned income. Did that change?
So what is proposed is changing is adjusting that rule and adjusting the rule in Medicaid Works that bars DD waiver users from entering. So it would be a change to the eligibility of Medicaid Works in a couple of ways that would fix this problem. But the other way that this is being looked at is new. In 2019, CMS, which is the federal version of Medicaid and Medicare that write rules that the state has to comply with, of course, also gives flexibilities that states can choose to offer or not. And in 2019, for the first time, the Federal Medicaid Office said, you know, if you've got someone who's in the same boat we're talking about, who would be losing Medicaid waiver eligibility just because of a parent's SSDI that they can't turn down, then you can set your system up to say, when you're calculating whether or not they're eligible for the waiver, you don't have to count that parent's SSDI. You can disregard
Nice.
it. Also alluded to a patient pay. It doesn't get you around patient pay. You would still have that very large copay, but you would be able to keep your waiver in exchange for that large copay. So it seems like a political win because the state gets money, right? They have people suddenly copaying into Medicaid who would otherwise be kicking back. So we are tackling this on both sides, and ideally would like to see it fixed on both sides. And I think I have reason to be optimistic for 2024. And I have a call this week with Delegate Shin to talk about her legislation around this, and lots of people are working on it. So it's very much in progress.
Lucy, have you
we are
looked
trying
at?
to find advocates or parents, I'm sorry, who are worried about this situation or affected by the situation, because essentially, as Marilyn said, once a parent retires, someone who's working suddenly has to choose between their waiver or work. And then, Marilyn, with the question you answered about what is PIA, I plan to retire late. And if either my husband or I die, my son would no longer be eligible based on the 300%. So we thought it would only affect people who work, but in fact, I will now tell the folks in Richmond that no, it's going to affect me if either of us die at 75%. My son is going to be getting more than 300% of SSI.
And that's
So
and Sherry,
we
I can
need
say
we
that's
need lots of
very
advocates,
common.
and please contact Lucy if you're worried about this or want to stand on this piece of legislation, because it's really important for financial planning. How are we doing, Anna? Anna, are you here?
She's still here. Anna, if you're speaking, you are muted. Sherry, do we want to jump to whoever might be speaking about ABLE accounts in the meantime?
Is Ashley here?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I'm just going to ask if anyone is interested in this Social Security situation and becoming ineligible. We're trying to collect names. We're also trying to collect information about folks who aren't working but would become ineligible for the waiver based on their parents, either their living parent, half of their retirement amount, or if either parent dies at that 75% of what you would be earning when you died or your spouse died, that would be more than the, what is it, Marilyn, 2883. So please, please, please contact Lucy, because this is something that you don't want to, well, you won't see happen when you die, but your child will. And at that, we found out that Ashley is also a certified nutritionist, but she's a consultant and client coordinator for the ARC of Northern Virginia, and is very, very good at giving us parents not only things to be worried about, but things we can do about our worries about our children's care once we leave.
Absolutely.
So go ahead, Ashley. Do you have a PowerPoint or?
I do. Let me go ahead and share that.
Okay.
Should be coming up. All right, can you guys see that? Awesome. All right, so if I'm looking over here, it's because I have two screens, so I'll be looking back and forth. But I'm Ashley. I'm with the ARC of Northern Virginia. I work on the Special Needs Trust team. So that's me. I'll just kind of skip through some of this. Many of you already know the ARC of Northern Virginia is one of over 700 state and local chapters across the United States that supports individuals with disabilities. And we have over 60 years of experience. I'll say that the Special Needs Trust program is unique to the ARC. There's only probably about a dozen ARCs throughout the United States that run a Special Needs Trust program. So, you know, if you go to the ARC of Prince William and ask them about their Special Needs Trust program, they are going to have no idea what you're talking about. So we're unique in that aspect. All ARCs run different programs, so there's lots of different exciting things going on at all of them. All right, so talking a little bit about futures planning, you know, Special Needs Trust, Marilyn has been talking to you guys about means tested benefits. So I'm going to talk to you about a Special Needs Trust and how you can use that to protect those benefits. So we'll kind of go through trusts. I'll quickly go through how a trust works with the ARC of Northern Virginia, our disbursement process, fees, and then if we have enough time, I'll touch on ABLE accounts as well. So we'll talk about how you can leave money to your child. So this is a lot of future planning, thinking long-term, not just how can you plan for your own retirement, but also how are you going to be able to plan for retirement for 3 or maybe 4 if you have multiple children who have disabilities. Why it's important, how one works, how do you disperse from a Special Needs Trust, and then why are we unique, and how can Special Needs Trusts and ABLE accounts kind of complement one another. So first of all, what is a Special Needs Trust? It is a legal vehicle that protects the assets of a person with disabilities while still allowing them to remain eligible for means-tested benefits. All right, so Social Security, Medicaid, housing vouchers, SNAP benefits, all of those benefits, Medicaid waivers that you've worked so hard to get. A Special Needs Trust is a way to protect those benefits. So someone could have $5 million in a Special Needs Trust and still be eligible for those benefits, okay? Who is eligible for a Special Needs Trust? So first of all, anyone with a physical, mental, and or developmental disabilities. So while the ARC of Northern Virginia is known for working with people with developmental disabilities, on the trust team, we work with folks who have a very wide range of disabilities. So we have clients who have mental health disorders. We have clients who have developmental, intellectual, brain injury. So it's, you know, a wide variety as long as that individual meets the developmental disability definition as defined by the Social Security Act. Okay, that doesn't mean that they have to be receiving Social Security benefits. They just need to meet that definition of disability as defined by Social Security.
Hi, I'm sorry to.
Why establish a Special Needs Trust? Again, we want to make sure that we're protecting those hard-earned benefits, okay? Another reason is that it could just help with money management. So you might have someone who might not have those benefits, but they need to, you know, they need some assistance. Sorry, I'm hearing some feedback.
Ashley, this is Sherry, and someone came in with an area code 5 something with last digits 48. Their microphone is on, and it may be Anna trying to tell us something. Is the person with the phone number ending in 48 trying to talk, or can we mute them? Okay, they're muted. I'm sorry, there was an echo. Keep going.
No worries. So again, someone might just need some assistance with financial management. So being able to make good choices and make sure that the money that they do have in that trust lasts for as long as possible. And then finally, just promoting the dignity, comfort, and happiness of someone with a disability. So I always say the government benefits, those are going to cover the basics. But if you want to do more than just cover the basics, be able to enhance an individual's quality of life, then a Special Needs Trust is a great option, okay? So who's who? This kind of gets into the weed. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide. what you need to know in the trust is that the people establishing the trust, we call those the grantors. The trustee is the person who has the fiduciary responsibility of managing that trust. With the Arc of Northern Virginia, the trustee is Key Private Bank. Now, if you were to go to an attorney and establish a private special needs trust, you would need to name your own trustee. So sometimes people will use a sibling or another family member or a friend. That person would eventually act as trustee when you pass. The downside of that is that's a big job. That trustee is responsible for, again, the fiduciary responsibilities. So managing the funds in the trust, managing investments to make sure that the money lasts for as long as possible, doing the tax accounting, doing the tax reporting, making sure that they're collecting receipts, making sure that the money in the trust is used appropriately and doesn't jeopardize any public benefits. So that can be a big ask of someone to do all of that. And then also, be an advocate and be involved in a loved one's life. So by establishing a trust with the ARC, you take that responsibility off of one single individual and you put that on the Arc of Northern Virginia and Key Private Bank. So together we manage these special needs trusts. The ARC is the account manager. So we have the day-to-day interactions of trust management. We're interacting with clients, we're educating people about special needs trusts, helping you set up the trusts. When you're ready to start dispersing from a trust, we're working with either the beneficiary themselves, if they have the capacity to do so, or their designated primary representative to make requests out of the trust. Key Bank is handling all that money. They're doing all that fun fiduciary stuff, okay? I won't get too into the weeds on this. Two different types of special needs trusts. There's a lot of different names. If you go on to, different websites, you might see them called a lot of different things. Essentially, there's two different types of trusts. There's a trust, we call it a third party or a family funded special needs trust. And as the name implies, it's third party money, somebody else's money that they're giving, putting into the trust for the benefit of the trust beneficiary. A first party or a self-funded trust is a type of trust where someone needs to put their own money in it. So for example, if I have a disability, I'm receiving Medicaid, suddenly Grandpa Joe passes and Grandpa Joe left me $100,000. That's going to put my money in jeopardy. So I need to put that into a first party trust, okay? So talk a little bit about the differences between the two. A third party family funded trust, who can establish that? A parent, of course, grandparent, other relatives, siblings, friends, anybody really can establish a third party trust on behalf of someone else, okay? If you want to establish one, I always recommend, you don't have to, it's just a recommendation. If you're doing your estate planning, often third-party trusts kind of go along with your estate planning. So contact a special needs planning attorney. They're going to be able to walk you through and figure out, is it going to be most beneficial for us to have a pooled special needs trust, or is a private special needs trust going to be a better option for us? So talk with the special needs planning attorney about that. If anybody ever wants referrals, we have a lot of special needs planning attorneys that we work with in the Northern Virginia area that we can recommend. When to fund a special needs trust, typically these types of trusts are not funded until the grantors, the people who established the trusts, pass away, okay? So often it's going to be through your estate, your last will and testament, or your living trust. It might be a life insurance policy. It might be investment policies where there is a beneficiary designation. So when you pass, that just would pass into the trust. So there's many different ways and methods that you can use to fund this trust. You can also put real property into a third-party special needs trust. So for example, if you have a condo that you want your child to be able to live in for the remainder of their life, and you want that property protected, that can go into the special needs trust, okay? What happens to the money in the trust when the trust beneficiary ultimately passes away? You as the grantor make that decision, okay? So it's up to you what happens to that money. You can name siblings, organizations, donate it to your favorite charity, whatever you want to do. That's up to you. Okay. First party trusts are a little bit different. And I'll go back and say with third party trusts, these have a very broad use of funds. I think the easiest way to think about, people always ask, how can I use money in a special needs trust? And the best way to answer that is consider the benefits that someone's receiving first, because the trust is only restricted by the benefits that someone is receiving. So if I have a trust and I'm getting SSI, my SSI needs to be paying for housing expenses and food expenses. My trust should not be paying for that because I do not want Social Security to then view my trust as a source of income. Okay. So when the short answer is really, it's just restricted by the benefits someone's receiving. Okay. So always let the benefits pay for what they're going to pay for, and then you can supplement from the trust. Slightly different with a first party trust in that it's still restricted by the benefits somebody's receiving, but this type of trust is only to be used for the sole benefit of the beneficiary. Okay, so things like buying gifts for family members, that would be unacceptable. It has to be for the sole benefit of the beneficiary. This type of trust is also slightly different in who can establish it. Often the individual themselves, if they have the capacity, they can establish this trust. A parent may establish it, a legal guardian or power of attorney, or sometimes it can be court ordered. So there might be a case where there's an injury settlement. We see that a lot. Someone's injured, there's a settlement, they receive a lump sum of money. A court may order a first party trust to be created in order to protect their benefits. Okay. It's the same process to set this one up. Again, if you want to, contact an attorney, you may not always need one with a first party trust. If there's a lawsuit or something, obviously you'll be working with an attorney, but these types of trusts are like, if there's an unexpected inheritance, again, Grandpa Joe passes and leaves me a bunch of money, it's going to need to go into a first party trust. Or if there's a lump sum payback from Social Security, you might decide, I don't want to just spend this money on things that I don't really need. I want to put it aside for when I really need it. You can then put it into a first party trust. Depending on the amount, you could also put it into an ABLE account, and we'll talk about that in a minute. It could also be from additional income. Now, this is not going to protect SSI. It's still income. But if you're trying to make sure you're still eligible for Medicaid, things like that, you could put extra, income in here into a first party trust. Another common one that a lot of people don't know about is survivor benefit plan. So if we have anyone on the call who is military and has a survivor benefit plan, it's a type of insurance policy that pays out upon the military member's passing. And eventually, after the surviving spouse passes, it would pass to the child, and that is considered income to the child. So you want to make sure that you irrevocably assign that survivor benefit plan to a first party trust. So again, it doesn't jeopardize their benefits. Okay. This type of trust is different when the beneficiary passes. This is sometimes called a Medicaid trust, Medicaid payback trust. Because for a beneficiary who's receiving Medicaid, Medicaid essentially has a lien. So if you, what they're saying with this trust is, yes, we're going to let you put this money aside into a trust, but when you pass away, when the beneficiary passes away, if there's any money left in that trust, Medicaid has a lien and they get first dibs on any money that's left. Now, one of the benefits with establishing a first party trust with the ARC of Northern Virginia is you have the option, in lieu of paying back Medicaid, you could always donate the funds to the ARC of Northern Virginia, and that would go back into our programs and services. But that choice is up to you. Okay. So that's a nutshell, the difference between the first party and a third party trust. I'll also just slide in, if no one has taken advantage of a free consultation, we do offer one-on-one consultations for free. So if you have specific questions about your situation, we'd be happy to, schedule a consultation and talk with you about that. I already talked a little bit about our partnership. So Key Private Bank is our trustee. They are the ones who are managing all the funds in the trust, managing investments. You do have the option to customize investments if it is over $250,000. They also hold real property, and they can do in-kind transfers of stock or act as executor or successor trustee on your own trust as well if you don't have anybody to act in that capacity. They do charge a separate fee for that, but for some families, if you don't have anybody else who can do that for you, that might be a good option. All right. So how we work, kind of how our team supports special needs trust clients, of course, during the pre-funding, before you've actually funded or even established a trust. We're going to work with you, educate you on how to use your special needs trust, why you should use one. We'll help you prepare the paperwork and facilitate the trust plan, and all that good stuff. Once it's funded, we're working with clients or their primary representatives to get disbursements out of their trust, make sure that folks understand how to use their trust. We're going to create a budget to make sure that the funds in the trust last for as long as possible. And then again, ensure that the way that the funds in the trust are being used is not jeopardizing any benefits, okay? Key Bank handles all of the, dispersing the funds once the ARC has approved that request. They're distributing monthly statements showing trust activity. They do conduct their own internal reviews just to make sure everything is on the up and up. They do the tax accounting, the tax reporting, again, the investing, and then managing real estate that's held in the trust. There is a disbursement process. I won't get too into the weeds about this either, just for the sake of time, but we do require that you make disbursement requests in writing. So we have a DR form, a disbursement request form. Requests that are over $300 need to be pre-approved. There's a lot of things that can be set up on a recurring basis. And a lot of our clients also take advantage of having a debit card that is linked directly to their trust. So they never have cash in their pocket. They have access to this card for spending money when they need it. Receipts, proof of how funds were spent, all of that is still required, but they have access to money for, everyday things that they might need. So our fees to establish the trust, there's a one-time enrollment fee of $1,050. If you needed to establish more than one trust, you can have both a first party and a third party trust if necessary. It's not always needed by everybody. Or you might have more than one child. So the second trust that you establish would be $775, okay? There's an annual fee associated with the trust as well. The fee is going to depend on whether or not the trust is funded. So if the trust is funded with a minimum of $500, then we charge 1.44% annually to the trust. So that money will get pulled from the trust on an annual basis. If you decide not to fund the trust upfront, like in the case with a third-party trust where you're not planning to fund it until you pass, then we would charge you an annual $65 fee instead until that trust is funded, and then it switches over to that 1.44%. Okay. Key Bank, again, handles the tax prep. So they charge $40 a year to do the tax prep. And then there's a closing fee. So when the trust is terminated or closed out, there's a $250 termination fee. All right. Quickly, I'll talk about ABLE accounts. Do we have time? Sheree, are we still good or?
We're good.
All right, cool. All right, so ABLE accounts was signed in December 2014. So still, fairly new. They authorized the state to create a new category of savings program. So they're kind of similar to a 529 account. They are intended to be a savings program for people with disabilities. They can be used for more than just education expenses. They're used for qualified disability-related expenses. This is a transactional account, so meaning it's a savings mechanism that's used in addition to, rather than instead of, a trust. So as I said earlier, they can complement one another. There are benefits to both. I always feel like you have to decide what's going to work best for your family. The ARC does not manage special needs trust. So if you have the ARC does not manage ABLE accounts. So if you have an ABLE account, you need to be thinking long-term again, who's going to be managing this account if my adult child at that point is not going to be able to do it. Okay, so think about that. There are maximums that you can put in per year. So the maximum is the federal gift tax maximum. Right now, that's $17,000. It does go up a little bit every year. And then to maintain Social Security, SSI, Supplemental Security Income benefits, you have to have, you can only have $100,000 in an ABLE account. Okay, so there's no maximum with a special needs trust. One of the benefits to an ABLE account is that you can supplement rent, housing expenses, and food expenses from an ABLE account where you cannot from a trust. So we do have a lot of clients who use their ABLE account for that sole purpose, to be able to supplement housing and food expenses, especially in the Northern Virginia area where housing is so expensive. And what we do in those cases is we will just transfer funds from their trust into the ABLE account, and then whoever the representative is who's managing that ABLE account will be able to use that ABLE account for those expenses. In order to qualify for an ABLE account, and I think that this rule is changing. If anybody knows me, can correct me, but I think they're bumping that age limit up maybe next year. Right now it's 26, so you have to have a disability diagnosis before 26.
Ashley, I'm sorry, it's not until actually 2026
Okay.
that rule is changing, but it is changing to 45 or 46, I believe.
That's right.
But we still have 3 more years.
Yep. Who can establish this? So of course the beneficiary themselves, as long as they're over the age of 18, a parent, a guardian, or an agent under a power of attorney. You can only have one, okay? One ABLE account. There are, financial institution fees. So wherever you're holding this money, the financial institution will charge their own fees. The contribution limit, so this was actually last year, so it's $17,000 this year with the federal gift tax limit. And then the total capped at the state limit for 529 plans. I'm sorry, it's $100,000 if you want to maintain SSI benefits. So SSI payments would be suspended if the assets go over that 100K limit maximum. You can, invest money in a ABLE account. The valid distributions, it's very broad. Broadly defined as disability-related expenses, qualified disability-related expenses. So I've seen a lot of creative uses for that. So I always just caution people, make sure that you're documenting this well, make sure that this expense somehow relates back to the adult's disability, okay? And then taxes and earned income is tax-free in the ABLE account. So some examples of things that you might be able to use the ABLE account for: education, housing, transportation. You can see it's a fairly long list, okay? I recommend, if you want to learn more about ABLE accounts, go to able, NRC, ABLE, NRC.org. That's a great resource to get you started. That's the ABLE National Resource Center, and they will give you a lot of good information about ABLE accounts and how to use them. These are reportable, of course, to the IRS. So if you're managing the ABLE account, you have to report on a yearly basis how the money was spent. That gets sent off to the IRS. They have the ability to investigate how funds were used. So you always want to make sure that you're not commingling funds. Yes, thank you, Sheree, for posting that. You're not commingling funds from your own checking account and then the ABLE account. Make sure that you're separating everything and have good documentation for everything, because just like with a trust, just like checking and savings accounts, Social Security and Medicaid, they have the ability to audit these accounts to make sure that they're being spent appropriately. Okay. Any questions?
Lisa, Sherry, and I had a question about one of the things that often needs to get supplemented are the expenses for personal care attendants or other folks who are caring for our kids. The rate of pay is insufficient to hire or keep a person. Can it supplement or be paid as a bonus to a personal care attendant?
The ABLE account or a trust?
Either.
Yes, I think you do have to be careful, and Marilyn might be able to answer that question better, just in terms of how it might impact Medicaid. But I think the trust would be able to pay for some of those things, anything that the benefit's not covering. So it could supplement some of those things.
Like a bonus or something.
Yeah, it wouldn't, as far as I know, it wouldn't have an impact on Medicaid, and ABLE, absolutely. That's why ABLE is in existence, to be able to help with any additional hours that you might need for the personal attendant. I don't know necessarily that you could call it a bonus. You may have to come up with another word or, some other situation. But, that's just vernacular. That's something that can be changed. But yeah, absolutely. That's exactly why ABLE is in existence. I mean, those are the type of expenses that absolutely would pinpoint why you would use an ABLE account.
I'm going to ask this again. I know people have to be careful what they say, and this is being recorded, but I have known parents to say that they are having to supplement the personal care hours for their kids. So if the rate of pay, I don't know, is $16.45 or something like that paid by Medicaid, there's a requirement that you cannot pay someone more than the Medicaid amount, but it's being done. So is there a defensible way to do this for folks who just can't find an attendant or want to maintain the person that's been with their young one for years?
I don't know if there's a way around that. That would be something that the Department of Social Services in that local area would be able to broach the subject, or the support coordinator, because that's something that I would usually refer back to them, because that has to deal with the Medicaid rate, and I'm not trying to give someone the wrong information on that.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. You can't, supplementing the rate could get problematic, but if you're only offered 25 hours a week, but you actually need 35 hours a week, there's no reason why you can't use those extra 10 hours and pay for those through the ABLE account. I don't know necessarily if you would want to use the word bonus, but again,
are you talking about the person who's providing the service is making more of a wage than what Medicaid provides?
In order to retain someone or to hire someone, parents have to often pay more than what the person's being reimbursed. So what I'm hearing is that one way would be that if I paid for the extra hours of higher rate of pay that makes it even, then that would be a way that I might be able to pay.
I would be nervous.
Yeah, I know, but people are doing it all the time. So I'm just trying to help some folks who may be looking for some ways of helping. Well, just getting a frickin' PCA, right? You can't. They're not there because they're not going to work for that amount.
You have to be very creative. Yeah, you have to be very creative in how you do it. An ABLE account can pay for those things, but you certainly don't want to go to circumvent any of the very specific waiver rules. And Anna's exactly right. You want to check on those rules. And as you know, there are plenty of people that are doing it, but I would look to see how they're doing it. But you could certainly do that using, if you're talking about just where the funds come from, and then it certainly could be, you could use ABLE account legitimately to pay for personal attendant. Now, how much you pay them would have to be, you're going back to those waiver rules again.
Okay, and then Ashley is on and going to have to get off, but we have a question from Moira about a holiday. If a person wanted to make a holiday gift to a group home staff or to grandma, Can
And
a able account or a special needs trust pay for, can either of these accounts pay for a gift that a person wants to give to someone else, including group
Sherry,
home?
I also just want to let you know, Anna did send me her PowerPoint presentation, so she's ready to go whenever you
Yeah,
are ready.
we understand that. Yes,
Okay.
thank you. So Ashley, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. My kids just came home, so I was trying not to get noisy. To answer that question, I would say no from the ABLE account because I don't see how that would relate back to a qualified disability related expense as a gift to somebody else. However, if they have a third party trust, then yes, they could gift from that account. So we have lots of clients who have, you know, a budget for Christmas or a budget for birthdays, and they can absolutely do that.
Thank you. And then there was a question above that I think Marilyn and Doug were having a conversation in the chat about, so my Social Security, my child's Social Security after I die is going to be too much. Can I just stick that in a special needs trust or ABLE account? And Marilyn's answer was no, you can't do that. It's still
You have
income.
to, yeah, the thing that you have to remember, and this is where a lot of people get very confused. Resources are resources. That's savings in the bank. So the very first month that you get, you know, grandpa dies and he leaves you $100,000. The first month you get that $100,000, it's income. If the $100,000 is still in your account the next month, then it is now a resource. So that's the same as if you're getting, you know, $2,500 from DI, if you get $5,000 as a gift, it's always going to be looked at as income the very first month. But if it's still in your general checking savings and you haven't moved it somewhere else and it rolls into the next month, it's now a resource. So there's no way around that, unfortunately.
Okay, and then the other is, can you choose the lesser amount of Social Security based on your parents' income for the disabled child?
Nope.
It's the higher of the two.
It's always the higher of the two.
Okay, and then I have one more question from Doug, and then we're going to move on. Is this around special needs trust, Doug? Because if not, we're going to go with Anna. Okay, if it's with special needs trust, then we need Ashley to help us.
Okay, so I get hit by a Safeway truck, and life insurance, a portion of my life insurance intended for my child, in my life insurance beneficiary designation, can I just designate her third-party special needs trust, and then it never shows up in terms of assets or income for her if it goes directly to her third-party special needs trust?
Yes. Also, that was an oddly specific example. But
a
yes.
great example. Great example.
Well, that's one way to stay around the asset limitation.
If you've got any assets where your child with a disability is named as a beneficiary, get them off of there and name the special needs trust as the beneficiary.
Which I've done, but I just wanted to verify that that's kosher.
And then our co-chair, Bertra, has a question. And you're on mute, Bertra.
I just realized I've been talking with you over the past several months. I was just going to add, and I want to make sure that the ARC updates its presentation. Don't wait until the parent dies.
Correct.
To begin this process. Okay, it doesn't happen quickly. You know, we needed an inherited IRA for my son recently. And so you needed a trust in order to get the IRA. It's just a lot of moving pieces. Do it in advance. I was going to tease Cherry. She kept saying, well, if I die, when I die, these things have to be in place. Thank you, Ashley.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Anna, are you ready?
I am. Let me see if I can share. Let me see if I can share it from my end. If it works, then if not, I have the backup of sending it to LaVoice. So hold on. Let's see if it worked. But my whole computer, it just froze. My coworker was like, reboot, reboot. I don't know what else to do. Okay, is it sharing? Can you see my screen?
No, but LaVoice has it. So LaVoice, do you want to share?
Okay, yeah, can you please put that up for me? I'm sorry. I thought I fixed it. I guess I didn't.
Okay. Thank you. Anna?
Okay. All right. So can you change the view? Change the view. Can you make it to the PowerPoint slide? There we go. Can you back up to the slide, the first slide? There we go. So I made this nice little PowerPoint just specifically for this today. So here we go. Let's see if I can get it to turn. I guess you're gonna have to advance it for me. It won't let me do it. So benefits planning as a waiver service. One of the questions that was put to me was what does a benefits planner do, or a work incentive planner, which is what my official title is with the educational community. It's a WIP or a WIP-C. What do I do and why is this important? So having benefits planning service with the Medicaid waiver is very important to the individual or especially the family, that helps with the understanding of the necessary criteria to keep the individual's benefits uninterrupted. And unfortunately, a lack of understanding of benefits can result in the disruption and or the termination of benefits. And that's the ones that come from Social Security, which is the SSDI, the SSI, and also the ones that come from Medicaid. Because if you get to the point where you're over the income limits with Medicaid, then you can have your waiver, your waiver can be canceled. And that's not something that the individual needs to be put through, because the waiting list is excruciatingly long. As most of you have been through that, know that. So when benefits planning service is added in to assist the individual with maintaining their benefits, there's many things that are examined within the livelihood of the individual. Okay, we look at their what they're receiving, if they're getting Medicaid, if they're getting SNAP. There's a whole array of benefits that are able for somebody to take advantage of once they're on Medicaid waiver, and some of them are able to be taken advantage of without Medicaid waiver. So this service is mainly for anyone who we provide services for, whether they're working or not. So it's been more, in my opinion, of this field, we provide more services to people who are working, because the income that they earn impacts their waiver services as far as their Medicaid and their SSI and their SSDI, which is from the Social Security Administration. So the benefits planning service addresses the SI, which is the supported individuals, what we call them, fear of losing impacted Social Security Administration benefits and health insurance at work, by providing the information and assistance in applying for Social Security Administration work incentives that protect the benefits eligibility for a period while they test their ability to work. Okay. The work incentive practitioner, which is me, I'm going to call myself a WIP, will gather information from the individual, their family, their employer, their caseworker, and their representative payee, as well as from agencies such as the Social Security Administration, the IRS, which is the Internal Revenue Service, Community Services Board, and the Department of Social Services. Sometimes those are together, sometimes they're not, depending on the location you live in. Okay. Benefits planners or work incentive practitioners are individuals who've been certified to provide work incentive counseling services to DARS, which is the Department of Aging and Rehabilitative Services, and that's usually in Virginia. I don't know if there's another state that's listening other than Maryland, who has Maryland has Maryland state issues. I don't know if there's DARS in Maryland. Or
yes,
they call it,
they actually have voc rehab. There are voc rehabs. Every state has a voc rehab program.
Okay, I don't know if that's called that. DARS is
DOORS. In Maryland, it's DOORS. Yeah.
DOORS, okay. So we provide services to DARS here in Virginia and Medicaid waiver clients who are receiving Social Security disability and supplemental security income, which is SSI, and Medicaid and or Medicare benefits and any other benefits received. So why is this important? This is important to maintain your benefits so that you stay able to take care of yourself, to pay your rent, just to have the regular quality of life that people who aren't disabled can maintain that by working. It's a huge benefit for them to have benefits planning because it's a complex and very broad subject and not very many people understand it. My supervisor here likes to tell me that I'm unrolling a ball of yarn every time I work with a client because it's usually got knots in it and it's all over the place. So I'm good at figuring that puzzle out. So the work incentive practitioner reviews the existing information and analyzes the current situations to pair them with the appropriate work incentives to permit the individual to maximize the benefits that are current and could receive additional benefits that are not utilized. And Marilyn touched on a lot of those. Ashley touched on some of them, but can you go to the next slide, please? LaVoice, can you hit the next slide? Is she there? Hello? There we go. Okay, benefits planning as a waiver service is the starting point. So the first thing we would do is we would submit the wages to we want to make sure that this is the most important caveat of benefits planning. If someone is working, they make sure they have to submit their wages to the Social Security because this is the primary, I'm going to say problem. If it's not done, then it creates all kinds of things that need to be taken care of. And simply submitting your wages to the Social Security Administration is not always a given of that they will receive benefits, but it's a starting point where the Social Security knows what you're earning in correlation with how much benefits you can receive. There are certain thresholds for people who are on SSDI. They can't work more than the SGA, which is 1470, because otherwise it puts them into a extended period of eligibility, and then it creates, they have so many months where they can work and make a certain amount, and then magically enough, their benefits are ceased, and they don't understand why. So we help them with understanding what these criteria are and how to keep them below a certain amount, or if they plan on working off the benefits, we help them establish a plan to do that. And it's with SSI, it's different. It's needs based, and you only you can get so much income. Like Marilyn had mentioned that it's $1, $2, or every $2 earned, you lose $1 of SSI income. And a lot of my clients don't understand. Well, I'm working. Why don't I get to keep all my money? And that's a common question I get, because when you're on SSI, you lose a portion of it because they consider it to be needs based, and if you're working, then they say you've met your need. So it's a catch-20. It's like grabbing a knife. Both sides you get cut. Okay, so the different work incentives that are available to assist in maintaining existing benefits, they are Able Now accounts, the student earned income exclusion. I perform a benefit summary analysis, which is an in-depth report of everything that you have. Medicaid Works is an incentive to apply for with the Department of Social Services, and that allows you to buy into Medicaid when you are in jeopardy of losing it. There's work activity reports, which go hand in hand with a subsidy. I write a lot of those. I have a lot of individuals who are on customized positions at their job, which means that they go into their job and they work. Say you go into Wawa and you apply for the crew member or the staff member position, and it has a list of 30 duties. And if you or I walk in off the street and don't have a disability and can perform all that, that's fine. But some individuals go in there and they say, well, I can't do this because I can't do that. I'm not able to do that. And they usually go hand in hand with a job coach. And I use Wawa as a good example because they have in-house job coaching on staff. They are providing that for their individuals that they hire that have a disability. The work activity reports go with the subsidy because it allows their manager to fill out a form and submit it to the SSA usually at a benefits planner's request to do so, because it provides, and Marilyn, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it provides the baseline for what this individual is capable of doing versus someone who's not in a customized position. And it applies the difference to their income on paper. They're still making the same amount of money. They're still making the same amount of income. They're just showing it at Social Security that they're making less per hour because they're doing a percentage of that position. Is that right?
That is absolute. Hold on a minute. So that is absolutely true. It's a Form 3033. The difference, though, I do have to say is it does not have to come directly from the employer. You can have a supports planner, case manager, job coach sign it as well. The issue with the 3033 is oftentimes, for instance, I have folks that work for Safeway and they get tons of job coaching, case management. The job itself is tailored or carved out for them, but then the 3033 is sent to corporate office that doesn't know how to fill it out. Or for sometimes the employer just doesn't want to fill it out because they think it's gonna get them in trouble. So in that case, other people can sign it. Supports planners, the CWIC, the Community Work Incentives Coordinator, if you really know that individual, you know the level of support they receive. If a person is receiving waiver services, most likely there is a subsidy or special condition that's involved. However, the thing about it, if you're talking about waiver doesn't look at subsidies and special conditions. So if you're looking at specific waiver regulations, that's another thing that the state has always tried to put into their into the state plan, is that they will acknowledge subsidies and special conditions.
Correct. But what my experience is that when I talk to the employer, they're more and I assure them that this is not anything that you're doing wrong. It's just information that the Social Security administration needs to know regarding this person's position and their work capabilities. And they're more apt to want to fill it out. And I've had at least 10 people that have said, "Oh, thanks for explaining that to us, because when we have seen this, we just throw it in the trash because we don't know what it is." So like you said, they're more reluctant to do it, but once they have an explanation as to how it can help their individual, they're okay with doing it. So, and then there's the 1619B. That's a great work incentive that people can get into, and that is when they work and make more money than the threshold allows. 1619B allows them to go without receiving their SSI, and it still allows them to keep their Medicaid. I have one client that's on this right now. She's making $40-something thousand a year, and I told her that if she works anymore, she's going to have to move to the District of Columbia because they have a higher Medicaid threshold or income threshold. And then there's Section 301. We have the impairment work-related expenses. We have the special conditions that Marilyn mentioned. We have a PASS. The PASS account is a great account. Those will help with someone who wants to go back to school or start a business. It's similar to an ABLE account, but it's not for the lifetime. It has a specific reason to have it open. And once you have to write a report on how long it's going to take you. You have to write a plan. It's like a business plan for someone who's on disability. They have individual development accounts. They have a blind work expense. I don't know what's going on with the Social Security Administration, but Marilyn coined it in a phrase, they're just simply a mess. I've had 3 clients in my caseload of my little company that I work for that have not had blind work expense put on their, or blind designation on their BPQY, which is a form that we pull to get their information. And so these people have been getting their Social Security most of their life, and they're not listed as blind, which if anybody has an individual that is a disability recipient, it's substantially more money. So this needs to go back and be corrected. And I'm in the middle of 2 people right now having that done. The BPQI is a benefits plan inquiry. It's a document that encompasses a lot of the individual's information, and we pull that to help write these reports and help to find out the information that is on file for them with the Social Security Administration. This shows their income. It shows what it shows their income that's been submitted over the past, I believe, 3 years, I think is the time period. It shows their Social Security benefits, whether it's SSI, SSDI, child disability benefit, disabled worker. It shows all of that. And then another one is overpayments. Those are, they result in one of 2 things: the income not being submitted properly in a timely manner, or the Social Security doing a wrong calculation. And I've had 2 incidences recently where the calculation has been on the SSA side. Okay, so the next slide. Benefits planning. What happens to benefits when the parent retires or dies? I think that Marilyn was very informative on this topic as far as when she was discussing when they get the half of the SSI changes to SSDI and gets half of the deceased parents' benefits. That was something when someone asked me this, I've always referred them to please talk to the CWIC or to someone who's on their case at the SSA. And if you call the SSA, you can ask for who your client's designated caseworker is, because they do have one that's assigned to every individual who receives benefits at the local office that you deal with. So whether it's you or your child or your nephew or whoever your family member is that receives benefits, get to know who their person is, and they will be easier as a contact point to when you call and talk to them, because anytime you call up, you just get anybody. So I would recommend when someone in your family passes away that has their child receiving their benefits, they should go before the SSA prior to them dying, so you know what's going to happen. That way, it's all on paper, and you have it all that information. So does anybody have? Some of my frequently asked questions that I get are how many hours can I work to keep benefits? This is a commonplace question, and I always tell them it depends on the different scenarios of what you're working and how much you're making and how much your income is. And another one is, am I eligible to work and keep benefits? And I say there's no one size fits all. It depends on what you're working, how much you're working, making an hour, how many hours you want to work, and how long you want to stay on your benefits and what your benefits provide for you. If you're working just to have your insurance, then you can work yourself off of benefits and still continue to receive the Medicaid waiver and the Medicaid benefits, and that's it. So the programs that I can enroll in, I listed probably 20 of them, and each SI or the supported individual is unique and will have unique advice based on what they're going on in their lives. So if someone's working and they're pretty high functioning and they want to enroll in something where they can work, like the individual I have that makes $40,000 a year, she has pretty much worked herself off of benefits, but she needs to keep her Medicaid because of a medical condition that requires that is the reason of her disability. So that's the main reason for the 1619B, that helps those individuals in that situation. So what was your question, Doug? You're muted.
Sorry, I was just going back and forth with Sherry about any other strategies, and Marilyn about any other strategies that haven't been talked about not forfeiting Medicaid based on increased money coming in after I die. And it definitely will adversely affect my daughter.
So can I ask you, where do you live?
Virginia.
Okay, you live in Virginia. You
Yep.
can contact the Department of Social Services and get into that Medicaid Works, that buy-in program. That will help.
The problem is that it's not going to retain the Medicaid waiver services that her daughter needs. And that's why we're advocating for changes in the Virginia law.
Okay.
The other issue.
Go ahead, Marilyn.
Well, the other issue remember with Medicaid Works, this is the problem with Medicaid Works, and that's why you don't have a whole lot of people in it, is that it's got that low threshold amount for unearned income. So oftentimes what can happen is you've got someone that is working, they're getting SSI, everything is great, and then all of a sudden they're flipped to SSDI. If they're getting over that initial threshold amount of $900 and something, I think it's up to $1,000 now or whatever. Anna, you would probably know this better than me. They can't get into Medicaid Works. And if they're in Medicaid Work, the other issue that I found is that if the person is getting SSI, they're on 1619B, and oftentimes DMAS will not move them to Medicaid Works because they already have 1619B. So it's a little bit of a problem there. I can say, and this is, and you touched on it, Anna, as well, is to tell people to go move to the other states available. I can tell you, yeah. Maryland. I mean, I do, because I still do it in Virginia and Maryland and DC, and I can't tell you how many times I tell people go across the bridge to Maryland. Their buy-in program is called the Employed Individuals with Disabilities. Literally, The threshold amount is like $75,000. You don't have to be getting SSI or SSDI. You have to just show that you applied. And if you were earning too much income, as long as you have the medical eligibility, you still can get into you can still get into EID. And if you're on the waiver, so for instance, in Maryland, you're still going to be on the wait list. But in Maryland, once you become waiver eligible, it's not much of a problem because you can always move over to EID, and EID just translates all of your waiver programs into EID. So, you can have somebody that's literally working 2 hours a week. As long as they're working and earning any amount of income, they're in the waiver. And on top of that, they can be on EID. The other issue too is that in Virginia, the way waiver calculates income is a 1-to-1 offset. They don't use those SSI calculations like that 2-to-1 that Anna talked about. So again, in Maryland, they do the calculation of for every $2 you earn, you lose $1 for waiver. So unfortunately, Virginia waiver eligibility rules and ongoing rules are really restrictive. They don't make it easy for people. We have a joke that runs through Virginia. This is Lucy will know this. It's like we're 46th for a reason, and it's there's a reason. We're one of the wealthiest states, we're one of the wealthiest regions, but we're 46th in terms of programs for people living with a disability.
But it's even more draconian than that, because this doesn't even consider someone working and earning something. Just based on the so-called death benefit from me,
yeah,
my daughter would be excluded from Medicaid.
Does your daughter
So
work?
No.
No.
Is she in a group home?
Yes.
So then she also loses her safety net group home
Yeah.
when you
That's-
die. So you're not going to
Yeah.
take care of her either.
So if anyone has any clairvoyance about lottery numbers, that would be helpful to go into a third-party special needs trust, because the state's not going to help her after I get.
We're working on that, Doug, and you need to contact me or Lucy and help with the advocacy as with everybody else. Okay, so my
Absolutely.
question: if someone's having trouble getting Social Security to listen to them, or some other agency about eligibility or things like that, can we ask our service coordinator from the CSB to authorize a benefits counseling service who can help? Because sometimes agencies don't want to listen to us or don't think we know anything. Is that the time that we can also ask to authorize the assistance of a benefits specialist, or what?
It's always best to have a benefits service on board with someone who receives Medicaid waiver, because one, it applies as two of their they need two services to have the waiver, and it applies as one of them. So it's a helpful service. Not only that, it helps fill that space on their waiver if they need to have that extra service.
So folks who have lost them or who are at risk of losing their Medicaid waiver because they haven't been able to get the personal care attendant, as I just shared again,
they can sign me up.
They can just get have a benefits counselor who's helping them with things, and that's a service that may help them maintain their waiver. Okay.
Correct.
LaVoice, did you want to add something about the service coordinator authorizing services and how that works?
No, I was just going to say with most waiver services that are applicable for someone, you can always ask for those services at any time. And I think to perhaps Bertra's point earlier, I would advise before you need it, to at least become educated about it and ask for it sooner than later. When you need it is not when you want to be asking for it.
Yes, because
Right.
there's a waiting period to get approved for services, and usually the need outweighs the waiting time.
If I could say also, if you're looking for just Social Security situations, that's where you can also go straight through the Work Incentive Planning and Assistance, the CWIC, and they will provide services once a person is found eligible for any type of benefits. And if there's a work situation, Truthfully, I don't know. I had the Northern Virginia system for several years, and I still get calls from folks in Northern Virginia. Social Security is a little bit different in that the best way to get in touch with Social Security is really to go through a community work incentive coordinator, a benefits planner, or someone else, because we have a lot of those back doors. Right now, calling Social Security is literally a crapshoot, and you may or may not get them on the phone. If you get them on the phone, you may or may not get the right answer. You can't just show up at a Social Security office and hope to see someone. You could wait all day and then they're going to send you home. They really are not making appointments right now. So I would say for a Social Security specific question, definitely you want to talk to a benefits planner, either through the WIPA, through Anna's program, or any of the CPWICs that are available.
That's like Access.
Well, it used to be Virginia Access. It's not
Okay.
Virginia Access anymore. And I believe in Northern Virginia, it is the Norfolk SIL. And I have the name of the person, but anybody can call me as well, because I still do the work. I'm still answering those questions in the Northern Virginia area. And also, I'm still working with the Social Security folks, because they're all the same people. Northern Virginia
Yes,
and
yeah.
Maryland are all, it's the same area work incentives coordinator that I'm working with.
Great. Okay. And we're now at the end. I just wanted to put back in a link to the newsletter from the ARC this month. There is someone from Social Security who's been there for Dave Melman. Is that his name?
Yeah. He's been there
forever. Since I was at Pizzi, is presenting. So that's a rare opportunity to find from the horse's mouth more about Social Security, as well as there's so much information that we were unable to cover, but I hope it's been enough to raise your awareness and get you, as Bertra said, to act now, not after you die. So at that, thank you so much. Our next meeting of the Developmental Disability Committee is December 12th. And thank you, everyone, for presenting. We learned so much. Anna, I thought you complimented Marilyn very well. Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking me. I was very honored, and my supervisor was very excited. I don't know if she ever got signed in, but she was leaving when this started, so we'll see.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thanks, LaVoice. Did you want me to stay on? You're on mute.
I think I can figure it out. I was just trying to go through the directions for recording the video. I'm
stop it for
yeah.
this portion and then.
Okay, let me do that first.
Okay.
Okay, stop recording. Okay, that's the part I was confused about.